Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pruning to Prosper. My name is Gina Morton, and this is the podcast where we prune away all the things standing between you and the woman that God has called you to be. Today, I want to talk a little bit about guilt. I know we all have it, especially if you're Catholic, right? It's like a word that we are very familiar with and a feeling that we are very familiar with. And I did a little something recently that made me feel horribly guilty. And I was talking to my therapist about it the other day, and she gave me some really good insight. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to share it with all of you in hopes that it can help you as well. So let me tell you the story about what I did. My husband and I were recently in Santa Fe, New Mexico, celebrating 22 years of marriage. And we found ourselves off a canyon road on this little wine bar, kind of nestled back behind some casitas. And it was a lovely outdoor venue. And the owner was playing guitar and just singing all the songs that my husband and I know from our childhoods. And my husband plays guitar with a couple of guys on a pretty regular basis, I would say. And he's a really good guitar player and he's a good singer as well. Okay. So when the owner, the guy playing the guitar, took a break, he came over to our table because, okay, so picture the scene. It's like outdoor, like lots of umbrellas at tables and the maybe the audience has like 20 people. I mean, people are drinking, they're having appetizers, whatever. Okay, it's not like a concert venue. So the guy comes over and he starts talking to us. Where are you guys from? What brings you here? That sort of pleasantries. And so, of course, my husband gets talking about music. And the guy's like, do you want to get up and play a set? And my husband looks at me and I look at the guy and I go, no, 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 no. He doesn't need to do that. And the guy is like, really? Do you want to get up? You want to... And my husband's like, he looks at me again. I'm like, no, he doesn't need to do that. Like, he's good. And, more pleasantries, da 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 da, whatever. But the guy walks away. He's kind of meeting other people at other tables. And my husband just looks down and he's like, why did you say that? And I was like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's our place to come here and like have you get up and do your thing. And he's like, that's what musicians do, Gina. They get up, they share a set, they do some back and forth, and it's all part of what we do, what we love. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like I didn't really realize that. Like I just thought he was being polite asking you." And my husband's like, "No, that's how it is." So the second set begins and the guilt that I am feeling just starts coming over me. And at some point, I lean over to my husband. I was like, well, do you know what song you would play? And he's like, yeah, I know what I would get up and play. And I was like, all right, well, just, send him a signal that you want to play. And he's like, no, it's over. Like the opportunity has passed. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I really feel horrible. So then, after a couple more songs, we leave and we're just walking around Santa Fe, and I'm just feeling worse and worse. And if you know me, when I'm not feeling really good, I just get quiet. And so I feel like I've just sucked all the air out of the balloon and I just feel horrible. And so my husband's like, what happened? Like you feel like you lost like all your energy. Like what happened to Gina from like 3 hours ago? And I was like, I just feel horrible, Dennis. I feel like, I pissed in your Cheerios. And he's like, well, you did. And he said, but I want to have a good dinner. Like we have great reservations. He's like, let's move on from this. And he said, I just want you to know that doing unique things like playing live in front of a crowd in an awesome venue, just a little garden. He's like, that is worth way more to me than any souvenir that I could ever bring home. He's like, I just love unique situations like that. And I said, okay, I understand. And so, all right. So thankfully, my husband gave me an opportunity to repair the situation. And I was able to, notice like, okay, note to self, this is the type of thing that's really important to him. And I am never going to do that again. And I told my husband that. I said, I will never do that again to you. And he's like, okay. And we were able to move on and have a great dinner and all that kind of stuff. But, every time I thought about it, I was still kind of like lingering, like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't have done that. And so I brought it up with my therapist the other day, and she said to me, guilt is not necessarily a horrible emotion. She's like, if you use it in the right way, it can be a motivator for change. So here's the difference, right? You can spiral. I'll use myself again as an example. I could spiral into, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible wife. I'm a horrible person. What kind of a person would just swoop in and steal that opportunity from the man that she so-called loves to pieces, right? I could have done that. But instead, I used that guilt to acknowledge that this was something that I did. Okay. It wasn't um, anything really sinful. I didn't mean to like do this to him. It was just a mistake that I made. So it was a thing I did. It does not define who I am. One mistake at a wine bar in Santa Fe does not erase 22 years of unconditional love and support and unwavering support that I have given this man for 22 years. Okay, so that's the difference. The difference is, do we let the guilt define who we are, or do we let the guilt become an impetus for change? And thankfully, I used it as an impetus for change. And so I will never do that again. I now know what is important to him, and I will always support any chance that he gets to get up and play live music. Now, my question for you today is, what are you feeling guilty about? Are you feeling guilty? I know a big one for moms is I yell at the kids. I'm always yelling at the kids. Okay. Do you feel guilty that you overspent when you and your husband decided that you were going to try to get out of debt? Do you feel guilty because you are eating crappy food? Do you feel guilty because you didn't exercise? Okay. That's one that I feel quite often. Okay. So, first of all, don't run from that feeling. Use it as like kind of a little bit of a nod. Like God gave us emotions. So give thanks that you're feeling this, right? It's a healthy reaction. And perhaps it's an opportunity for you to look honestly at the situation and say, do I feel guilty because I know I should be doing better, right? Um, do I feel guilty because I shouldn't yell at my kids as much as I do? So, does this define you as a mom? No, you yelled. Let's just say, okay, I yelled, I feel guilty, but you're going to repair the situation. You're going to apologize to your kids. You're going to make a plan for how that's not going to happen again, or maybe not as frequently, so that maybe when you do yell, the kids take notice, right? Because eventually we become just like the whiny mother, and we're yelling so much the kids don't even respond. Okay, so that's what I kind of feel that way about vulgar language. Like if you're constantly using vulgar language, then there's nowhere to go when you're absolutely at your wit's end, right? Like, not that you should ever be cursing or doing things like that, but it just dilutes the power of certain words when you're constantly overusing them. Same with like when you yell. If you're overspending or you're trying to get out of debt or you're bringing more stuff into the house after you promised your husband you wouldn't, right? These are good little nods of guilt that it's like, hey, you promised yourself or your spouse this or your family this, and you've gone back on that promise. So use it not as a chance to spiral, right? That's an unhealthy use of guilt, but use it as a positive motivator for change. But then really do make the change, because if you don't truly make the change or make the attempt to change, you're just going to spiral. You're just going to keep feeling guilty. Okay. So, Anything that you're feeling guilty about today, I want you to pause, give thanks, and then make a plan for how you can repair the situation. Have a great day, and I will see you next Wednesday for another episode of Pruning to Prosper. Take care.